Well, good day everybody, and I'm glad you could join me. You're probably working at home right now or maybe somewhere else off-site. Today I thought I would give you a tour of the shop. This shop at John Paul II Collegiate has both woodworking and metal fabrication, and we have tons of tools and a lot of space for you to get your hands dirty when you get back, of course. So, there they are. Safety glasses first, and come join me on my tour. So when you first come into the shop, you want to make sure you're safe. Now, we talked about that in the last video, but basically it means that you want to be nice, neat, and tidy. You want to have your glasses on, and not only do you want to have glasses on, you want to make sure that they are clean so that you can see through them. So clean them like this, or you can go to the sink and do that. Put them on, they stay on at all times until you leave the shop. Make sure you have short sleeve shirts. If you have anything long, it has to be rolled up. Any jewelry has to be taken off, unless it's nice and tight, like these short earrings, that's fine. Any long hair has to be tied up, and basically any lanyards, anything that's hanging out. Your shoes, you should have closed-toed shoes, no sandals allowed in case you drop a chisel, and that's basically all we need in this shop until we get to welding, and then it's a little bit different story. We try to cover up a lot of things to make sure we don't get burnt by molten metal. So that's our first step. Once you're safe, you come in and you're going to be joining me at this table right here. I'm going to have you in a semicircle, then I go ahead with attendance and any kind of other housekeeping items and what you're going to be learning for today, just kind of an overview. So those are the first procedures. Don't bring any binders in here, don't bring anything extra, no backpacks. We have a nice size shop, but we don't have a lot of extra room. So we want to keep it nice and clean and tight in here because it's safer and it's more efficient for our workspace. So although this school is built in somewhere in the 80s, this school has been very well maintained, this shop. There's been a lot of updated equipment here. We have tons of equipment here, and both in the woodworking and the welding area, and we can do tons of different types of projects here. Small, large, metals, woods, and you can see some of those projects up on the Wall of Fame. Now, these students up here on the Wall of Fame are just some of the students that I've taught here, myself and Mr. Sadlowski and Mr. Perot and some of the past teachers here over the past 17 years, since I've been here, of course. But there's been many, many, many more that have come through here, and very successful students, both in woodworking and welding, but in many of the other trades. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a quick kind of tour of the shop to show you where the supplies are, where the screws and nails are, where some of the hand tools are, power hand tools, and some of the stationary tools as well, in both the woodworking and the welding area. And then I'll have some questions for you when I'm all done. So the first thing you do when you come into the shop is put on some safety glasses. Now, I know I've already put these on previously, but I just wanted to show you that these are located in socks. Now, the reason we keep them in socks is so they don't get all scratched up. So as soon as you put them on your face, you put the sock back, and as soon as you're done for the class, you take them off your face and put them in the sock. Make sure you don't put them anywhere else, because putting glasses down like this scratches them up. We don't want to scratch them up. We want to keep them nice and clean, nice and new, so that we don't find it a chore to keep on. We want to be able to see through them. You'll even have to probably clean them a couple times during the class. So that's where you find the safety glasses. And like I said, once you've done that, semicircle, and we call it a semicircle safety check because that's when I'm checked to make sure you're ready for the class. So I thought we should talk a little bit more about safety. Now, safety is the #1 thing of importance in this class. Safety comes first, all the time. In this shop, we have a lot of power and a lot of power equipment, and if you get caught up in the equipment and we need to shut it off immediately, we can do so by pressing this button. Now, this button is not a toy, because if you go ahead and press that button while other people are using equipment, you might actually be causing harm to other people. We only use it in an emergency. We have 2 of the buttons, one at the back, I guess this is the front, and one at the back. And the one at the back especially is for when we leave in case of a fire. We want to turn that power off right away. So don't play around with that button. In order to turn it on, we have to go into that room, and I actually have a new system where I have to unlock this. So once you hit this, nobody can turn the power on without us unlocking the shut off, and then we can go ahead and we can turn the power back on. Now we know when the power is on by the little red light at the back of the class. So once that light's on, the power has been engaged, and we can continue or start our woodworking and our welding in this class. So before you get started with your woodworking project, you need materials. Now, Woodworking Materials is found right here in this northeast corner of the shop. We have a humongous amount of woods here. Mostly we use maple, oak, and some pine, and a little bit of walnut for decorative touches. And we have material that comes in rough boards because we have the equipment to plane it. So here's an example of, oh, that's not a good example. That one's all broken up. Here's an example of a nice piece of oak, red oak, and this is a piece that we could definitely work with and put it through our machines. That's what oak looks like. Maple's here. Now, maple's here. This, you can see, is not a finished board. This side looks a little bit more finished. That's maple. Here's a nice piece of walnut. Now this walnut is quite expensive. I think it's $12 a linear, no, not a linear foot, $12 a board foot compared to maple and oak, which are around that $4 mark. So this is quite a bit more expensive. But we do use it for projects here and there. Usually it's just decorative or for bowls or things like that. So that's our walnut. We have some spruce 2x4s, 2x6s, some 1x6s, but we don't keep a lot of that because it tends to warp when we keep it inside, so we just buy it when we need it. And I said we had some pine, but the pine is quite high up, so I can't really show you that. Other than that, we have a scrap wood area as well, where we have smaller pieces that students have cut off, where whenever we can use scraps we do. We don't throw too much out here. And there's plywoods here as well. So plywoods are 4x8 sheet stock. So we have, for example, big 3/4 inch maple, we have 3/4 inch oak, no walnut in plywood stock. We have MDF, medium density fiberboard, fiber core, that's here as well. And generally we stock 1/4 inch and 3/4 inch. Sometimes we'll order in 1/2 inch for special projects in the plywoods. And then we have some construction grade material like fir and spruce plywood just in this section here. But we have quite a bit of wood for a shop our size. If you find something we don't have, you can order it, or we can order it for you if we have we do have the ability to do that. But in some cases, if you want something, let's say you're building a ice fishing shack, generally that's something that you go out and you pick up some of those materials on your own, some of those construction grade materials. So I'd like you to take note at how nice and neatly stacked all the lumber is in this area. If you don't stack lumber on top of each other nice and flat, if you let it go off to the side and be all messy, it warps over time, and lumber is expensive. So if you take a look at this here, the plywood sheets are nicely stacked, one on top of the other. The maple, oak, it's almost like a Tetris game. We try to make sure everything fits in nice and tight, so that not only do we save the wood from warping and twisting and cupping, but we also save space. So when we first get it off the truck, we make sure it's nice and tight in those little cubby holes here. And whenever you take a board out, and if you don't like it, if you want to put it back in, make sure that you put it in nice and flat, just to save that board for the next person. Okay, in this northwestish, north central corner of the shop, we have this brown tool chest. Now in this brown tool chest we have our powered hand tools. Now we try to keep it nice and neat and tidy. For example, if you take out this jigsaw here, you'll notice that the cord has been wrapped around it nicely before it's put back. If we keep it nice and neat and tidy, it's easier to find things and to get them quickly and more efficiently. As soon as you've taken a tool, used it, bring it back into this location and put it back on the shelf. But we have tons of tools here. Not all the tools. We have some tools in the blue cabinets on the east wall. But we have tons of tools here. Drills. This is an impact driver actually. We have some really nice DeWalt drills and drivers. Nice Porter cable biscuit joiner like I showed you. We've got a jigsaw. We've got 3 jigsaws, 2 Makitas and a DeWalt. We've got hand planers back here. Now, some things are going to be a little dusty. The vents kind of recirculate in this area, but not a big deal. And some sanders back here, some more drills, some routers, a reciprocating saw, all kinds of things back here for you to get to help build your project. So on this east wall, as I was saying, first of all in the cabinets, that's where you're going to find those extra tools. But you're also going to find in each of these drawers, starting here, sandpaper. So there's 80 grit, then there's 120 grit, 180 grit, 220 grit in each of the drawers. So that's where the sandpaper is located, and we'll talk a little bit more about sandpaper use a little bit later on. On this wall also you'll find our screws and some nails, glue here, just some of these quick clamps up top, I don't know if you can see that. And then on this side you see some of our measurement tools. Tri-squares, carpenter squares, framing squares. We have some rulers, some meter sticks, some sliding T-bevels. We have combination squares, and these are actually some drywall squares, but we use them for layout and cutting as well. So that's where you find all those measurement types of devices for your project. So when you're building with wood, you need clamps and vices. Each of the tables that we have in the shop, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, have 4 table vices. So 4 times 4, 16 of them. So you should always be able to find one of these. And clamps. Clamps are very necessary when you're building with wood and sometimes metals. Here we have some beautiful pipe clamps. These are beautiful, I say, because they have feet on them, and these are called Bessie pipe clamps. And these feet, we'll talk more about those later. They're awesome. We have some bar clamps. These are also Bessies. And some more bar clamps. And then some longer pipe clamps over here. And under this table we have some C-clamps. Now C-clamps are called C-clamps because they are the letter C, or D if you close them, but for some reason people thought they should be a C-clamp rather than a D-clamp. So these need to be stored. You just open them up a little bit and put them on this square tubing, or this little bar right here. Don't throw them under here because we need that extra space whenever we can get space in the shop. So that's where we store the C-clamps. There's some pipe clamps on the other side, and there's also some pipe clamps on that table as well. You're probably noticing all of our clamps are pretty much stored underneath these 3 tables. That's where you'll find the clamps. There are some longer pipe clamps that are located on the north wall by the brown tool chest that I just showed you as well. Okay, so for this next part of the video, I'm going to take you on a walking tour of the shop. I'll show you all of the pieces of stationary equipment during this time. Make sure to pay attention to this as well, as there might be a few questions coming at you next. Okay, so this is just a quick 360 scan of the shop before we begin our walking tour. That's the east wall, the north wall, going on to the west wall, and that you can see it's a fire escape, and over to the south and back to the door. So let's begin our walking tour. Oh, the smell of the shop. Everybody that comes here seems to really like the smell of the shop. Now when you first come into the shop, you're going to see our main desk here, and that's where I do my first lessons of the day, but those lessons can happen anywhere in the shop. The first stationary tool we'll see is this Delta table saw. It has an extension table on it, and we have lowered this work table so it's the same height so that we can use it to cut sheet stock. Great table saw. It's definitely one that we use a lot. Past and behind we have the two lathes. You can see that a couple of students have been working on some bowls. Looks like walnut and maple. There's those chisels behind them. Then we have, the storage room, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about stationary power tools. Here we have a panel saw. This is a great tool for cutting sheet stock, and it's fairly safe as well. Beside that, walking by the power on-off switch, we have the edge sander, and on the west wall we have the Bosch sliding compound miter saw, and right here we have the jointer, the Delta 6-inch jointer, also a very valuable tool, been here a little while, as well as this Delta thickness planer. It's a 20-inch planer, and it can go as thick as, what does it say here? 9 inches. So it's a 20 by 9. Beside that is our other table saw. We have two table saws. Now this table saw is a saw stop, so it's got some safety features on it. We'll talk more about that later when we talk about the individual tool lessons. And if we keep on going on the west wall, we have another miter saw. Now this sliding miter saw is really valuable because it has this big long table, so we can put long items on here without having to support them. The table does the supporting, and of course we do have some storage underneath it. So we have two sliding miter saws in the shop. Now to the east of the sliding miter saws we have two general band saws. Now we actually have 4 band saws in the shop, but these two are over here. They are hooked up to the dust system, and they are a very nice band saw. We use them quite a bit as well. Past here, now this isn't really a stationary tool. It is our sanding table, but since we're going by it, I'll talk to you about it. We do all our sanding here. It's got little perforated board on the top, kind of like pegboard, which allows the dust to go into our suction system. And beside that we have a stationary belt disc sander, a Laguna, which has been here only for a few years. It's an okay machine. I preferred our old one. This new one maybe has got too much plastic on it, but it works just fine. Now the welding area and the fabrication area, I'm going to talk about that in another video, but you can just quickly scan by that area. Before we do that, here's our 3 router tables. Blue, red, and wood. Also used quite a bit. Now here's our older band saws. Now we use these still. We have big classes, so we want to, if we want to use the old ones, we fire them up. They work just fine. We just pop them over to this area, and beside them are the two general, these are drill presses, and they're floor models, so that means they are based on the floor. So we have two floor models. These are the heavy duty big ones. In the metal fabrication area you can see we have a couple there, but those are for metals. And then we have these two Mastercraft. Now these have proven to be valuable, very valuable. They're nice little drill presses that we use very, very often. And beside that we have oscillating spindle sanders. Oscillating just means that they go up and down and around at the same time. They're Tritons. We used to have rigids, and those rigids we'd have to replace all the time. Love these little things. They work well. They sound like a vacuum cleaner, but they work super well. Okay, so now that you're done class, we can talk about cleanup. For cleanup, I allow you to take your safety glasses off. Make sure you put them back in your socks. Now you do have to have safety glasses on if you're going to blow yourself off with compressed air, but once you've decided if you're going to do that or not, we'll put those away and we can begin cleanup. Now with cleanup, we just, for this sake right now, we're just going to worry about where location of items are. So in this drawer right here we have little hand brooms, and these hand brooms are for sweeping everything up off the tables, off the equipment, off of your projects and things like that. When you're done with them, please put them back. So over here we have our brooms. So this is for just pulling dust from underneath the equipment, underneath the tables, underneath projects. And also these brooms are used for when we get a pile of dust, we can put it into a shovel, a grain shovel, and put into that garbage can. We have 4 or 5 of those, and we have, looks like about 7 of these. Now these are just push brooms, and these are used to just broom up the whole shop. We generally broom it to a central location, everybody, maybe a couple locations, and then we take and we put it into the grain shovel, onto the grain shovel, and into the garbage. And that's about it. We don't blow anything off. Sometimes we'll vacuum some things off, but we don't use compressed air too much because it just puts a whole bunch of dust into the air. And we eat enough dust during the day as it is. When you're done with your broom, make sure you put that back as well, properly, so it doesn't drop on anybody's head. And then you're good to go. Make sure you stay in the shop until the bell rings. We don't like loitering in the hallway. And that pretty much brings my video to an end. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new and got a little bit of a tour of our school shop. Next up are a few questions for you to answer. Thanks for joining me.